Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, in 2024, all the discourse surrounded the core seven swing states, or the supposed core seven swing states, because some of those swing states were less close than some of the not so swing states. But it was considered that any presidential candidate would win through these seven swing states. You obviously didn't have to win all of them. Trump's easiest path was one, two, three. Kamala Harris could sweep four of the seven swing states and still lose. And Kamala Harris's easiest path was one, two, three, winning three out of seven swing states and still lose four of them and win. Notice how both of those intersect at Pennsylvania. But Trump ended up sweeping all seven of them, like I had predicted previously to my final prediction. And what behind closed doors I had been saying for a little bit, as opposed to the people who thought that North Carolina would flip to Kamala Harris and somehow she would win Arizona. We got the election quite right on this channel, and most sensible people did. But it's a bit hard to predict an election 4 years away. You know, November 4th, 2024, when I had all of that data, all the polls, all the rallies, all the early vote turnout, and that's especially where I derived most of my prediction from because this thing I'm working on is called the unitary theory of all elections. I made that name up, and I've been working on it. It's just been a theory of mine, hence the theory part, which is that any election can be determined just by turnout. Um, it applied relatively well to the presidential election. On election day, you saw relatively strong turnout across the country. Obviously, we didn't meet 2020 turnout, but you were never going to. And in early voting, you saw strong turnout for Republicans, meaning that Trump had gotten the Republican base out, and most of the losses in turnout from 2020 were going to be from Kamala Harris voters. People shut their eyes to that. Not sure why. But why I bring these seven swing states up is because I believe that thinking that these were the only competitive states, the people who seriously thought that North Carolina and Arizona would be competitive in this election, and the people who shut their eyes to New Hampshire or Virginia or Minnesota or even New Mexico and New Jersey as long shots, had a complete failure this election. And going into the future, I think these swing states will shift yet again. 2016, you could say that the core swing states looked something like this. Even with Wisconsin expected to go heavily to Hillary Clinton, the path for Republicans was to win Nevada, North Carolina, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, and New Hampshire. That was considered Trump's really only path to the presidency. 2020, you go into the election, the Trump campaign and the Biden campaigns had really conceded Michigan to Biden. New Hampshire was expected to go heavily to Biden. You might have even seen some forecasts that said that Wisconsin and Pennsylvania would have gone to Biden easily. Nevada wasn't even considered to be particularly competitive. And instead, the election was about how much Trump would lose. Even some people considered Maine second, Biden the favorite in that district, to the point where it wasn't even in contention. But you've seen these swing states evolve over the past few cycles, and I think they will evolve again. Um, I think a lot of these swing states will trend, some quicker than others, away from being swing states, such as Arizona. I really cannot classify as a swing state anymore. Obviously, it will be a swing state for 2026, and Republicans trying to dislodge now both of these states' incumbent Democratic senators will be a battle, and they will be very swingy for those elections, and I could perhaps see it narrowing up a bit and a fluke Democrat win in the state every once in a while. Same thing with Nevada. Nevada seems to be trending heavily Republican, but I could potentially see Republicans have some trouble knocking off the three House incumbents that Democrats hold. 75% of the seats in a state that Trump won by four makes sense. But Wisconsin, just open your eyes. But I could potentially see some trouble there, plus getting rid of Jackie Rosen and Catherine Cortez Masto. But for the most part, um, I'd say both of those states will trend towards being Republican. And I feel like most people agree that. Uh, if I had to say, around where people expect the swing state map to be, it looks like this. Some people think that New Jersey and New Hampshire could be competitive into the future. I've heard some people say that Ohio will rebound into being competitive. They're retarded, but it's a given. Some people think that Alaska will be competitive in the future, but I really disagree with that. And I'll go into other swing states in depth, but I'd say if you want to have a core block of swing states, I really don't think you can include Michigan in them. Um, and it seems like a hot take, and I'm really one of the only people backing this up. And even me being bullish on Michigan and Georgia for Republicans, while being less bullish on Pennsylvania, is unique. A lot of people, and I've seen even on point politics, thinks that Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania will drift off into being Republican states, while Michigan really won't. And I think it's the complete opposite. And today, I think I'd take a step back from the predictions. The constant barrage of this candidate will win this state and this candidate will win this state, and just presume like a generic Republican. And we're heading into the future. The electoral map is changing. Trends probably continue. Obviously, I'm not going to claim that these are set in stone. Miami-Dade shifted 19 points Republican this election cycle. As recently as 2016, Trump was losing ground in the county. And Biden was expected to hit like 70% or something in it. So some of these trends you just can't grasp that. And a lot of them, if you're gonna be right, you're gonna be just pulling them out of your ass. And on average, you'll be more right than the average person who spends their life predicting these things. The people who have no fucking social life outside of, oh my god, guys, my laser-eyed politician. Um, on Twitter, guys, I'm the fucking uh, uh Loudoun County, Tennessee stan. Guys, I have such a great life. Like, on average, you'll be better than them if you just pull these trends out of your ass. So, taking it with a grain of salt, this can be wrong. This does not mean that Democrats will lose every election in Michigan forever. That by 2026 election day, I will be saying that Rashida Tlaib is dead on arrival. And Republicans will sweep every statewide office in Michigan. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I'm saying is, out of the three main Rust Belt states, I would say the most likely one, since I think one of them, at least, will become a Republican state in the short term. I think the most likely one of them to become a Republican state in the short term would be Michigan. Now, why do I say that? Well, I think we got to go through what I think the core four Rust Belt swing states will be for the future. If I had to say where I think each state leans in the future, I think the electoral map will eventually settle into something like this. For the near future, I do think Georgia will remain Republican. I think you got like one or two cycles out of there for now. So for the electoral map will probably look something like this for a little bit. Maybe you could throw in New Jersey or New Hampshire. But I'd say long term, it'll probably look something like this. You could throw in New Jersey. New Jersey, we have to wait and see if those trends over the last 3 years are a fluke or not. But for the most part, I think this will be the map. And the big thing is, if Republicans win Michigan, they just have to win one other state. If they win Pennsylvania, also in this scenario, they automatically win. Um, you were like 0.3% away off from this actually being the tipping point coalition for Trump. If Georgia had voted to the left of Pennsylvania, it was pretty close to, and honestly, had you not had the Bob Casey shenanigans in Pennsylvania, legitimately could have happened because Georgia was R plus 2.2, and Pennsylvania was R plus 1.7. So had you not had the Bucks County Election Board do their thing, you could have legitimately seen Pennsylvania vote to the right of Georgia. But I'd say this is a potential Republican coalition heading into the future, and the fact that Michigan alone doesn't give Republicans an electoral college majority is a problem. But I still do think Republicans have the best shot in Michigan. I think, as an example of something that they really don't have the best long-term trends in, I'll go to Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania, I still think is Republican for the near future. Um, there's even some states where I think Republicans will do better in the near future. It'll look like it's trending Republican, but then there'll be one election or maybe two elections where it snaps and then it turns back. Pennsylvania is a perfect example of that. Pennsylvania, I think, in the short term, Republicans will begin to do better. I think 1.7% is a little bit small for the average Republican margin of victory in the future, especially if I'm right about Republicans having a better time in presidential elections than Democrats as turnout dynamics begin to shift the balance we've seen for a while. And that 2020 is kind of a fluke based off COVID, as long as Republicans continue to embody the Trump coalition. But I think what you'll see is you'll see northern Pennsylvania, northeastern Pennsylvania, begin to go a little bit more Republican. You see a lot of counties under 70% for Republicans. And while I'm not saying that 70% is it, and that Republicans can't hit over 70% in any counties, like, I mean, they hit 81% there. Um, and Fulton, I'm not sure where Fulton County, Pennsylvania is. I memorized these a long time ago, and then I decided, wait, why don't I make something useful of my life? But Fulton County, much more Republican than any other county. Trump's hitting 86% there. I'm not saying that, oh, the bare minimum for Republicans is 70%, but I do think that once you're hitting 70%, especially in these areas like something like Pike County or Carbon County, is not exclusively rural areas. It's very rural, it's very working class, but you will at some point have some holdouts. And by the time you don't, we'll hit the rest of what I'm talking about. But I think you'll see Republicans begin to do better in northeastern Pennsylvania. Um, get as much out of these rural areas as possible. Along the Ohio border, you do have some room to grow, like Washington, Westmoreland, Fayette. You can definitely grow in that area, and you are growing to some extent. Fayette, Washington shifted Republican, Westmoreland, and Allegheny barely Republican, though a lot of that is some suburban trends. But you can gain in this southwestern corner of Pennsylvania and along the Ohio border, in some areas of central Pennsylvania. So I think in the near term, that state begins to take on a slight Republican tilt, though obviously it's still going to be important. And I do think that North Carolina and Pennsylvania, Democrats will have to win one of them to win the presidency, because Arizona and Nevada, I think, begin to shift off into being a little bit more Republican friendly. But Pennsylvania is definitely the Democrats' best choice. And the problem is the suburbs. I think Philadelphia, the Democratic margin falling off a little bit, and some of these areas like Allentown, Berks County, Northampton, northeastern Pennsylvania, the Ohio border can counteract any anti-Republican shifts in the Philadelphia collar counties. But at some point, I think you eventually hit a tipping point where Republicans are maxed out in the rural areas. They really only gain northeastern Pennsylvania. Maybe you see Erie County become a little bit more Republican. Um, and along the Ohio border, Republicans begin to do better. But Allegheny County, not a Trump-friendly county. Um, to some extent, people have the idea of Pittsburgh as like this really working class area, big Trump area, or at least the areas around it. Especially the misconception of having like the 17th district over here is like a very Trumpy district. Chris DeLuzio's like Trump district Democrat. People kind of have that idea in the back of their minds, even if they're not fully focused on it, and like even if they can recognize it's not the best idea. But this isn't a Trump district. This was a Trump 2016 district that ended up voting for Biden and for Harris, if I'm not mistaken. I know Harris, I know Biden. I don't know if it went to Trump or Clinton, uh, but I voted for Romney. It's very suburban, and especially the areas of Allegheny County that are shifting right are like very inner city Pittsburgh, and mostly Democrats took the hit in 2016. That's it. You're not losing any more there. And unlike Philadelphia, where Democrats bleed a bit every cycle, Pittsburgh, you took the hit, and now the suburbs are just continuing to shift blue. And like at some point, you hit a tipping point where you'll just continue to collapse, and Allegheny County Democrats will rack up a bigger and bigger vote margin. There's not too large of a county, but in a very key swing state, you don't want to be losing 3% here every cycle. And Philadelphia, I think Republicans can do better, especially on the northern side of Philadelphia, and maybe knock down the margins a bit in the southern side of Philadelphia. But you'll also hit a point probably where you'll see the collar counties begin to shift left again. I'm not sure about Bucks County. I don't know if that was like a temporary blowback to the Biden administration or an actual trend, because if you look at it compared to the state at large, it trended Republican. Same thing with areas like Montgomery, Chester, barely, Delaware, Philadelphia, and most of northeastern Pennsylvania. It trended Republican. Is that because it's trending Republican, or is that because it's a very swingy area and it swung towards Biden, then it swung back towards Trump? Because there's areas where like they don't swing at all. Tioga County or like Warren County. These areas barely swing at all. For the most part, if you voted for Trump in 2020, you voted for him in 2024. If you voted for Biden in 2020, you voted for Harris in 2024. It's not going to swing. Mostly turnout is what's going to affect it at the end of the day. Like, nothing much else is going to end up affecting a county like Warren County. A lot of these rural counties, and especially long term, they're not going to swing that much. So there's two options for Pennsylvania. Either these suburban counties become the bellwethers, and like if they're swinging Republican, Republicans win. If they're swinging Democrat, Democrats win. And it could also include Lancaster in this, though I think Lancaster at some point will just begin shifting Democrat. Very traditionally Republican area that has swung Democrat in recent years, barely swung Republican 2024. It's going to eventually start swinging back Democrat again. Don't be shocked, even if Vance wins Pennsylvania, if it's like under 10 or something obscene like that. But there's two possibilities for Pennsylvania. Either it becomes like, Republicans lose a little bit in the rural areas on average. Democrats lose a little bit in Philadelphia, maybe gain in Allegheny, maybe Republicans gain in northeastern Pennsylvania. And then it's like, who loses more between Lancaster, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery? Do Democrats swing both of them, or all four of them left? Do Republicans perhaps swing the collar counties a little bit Republican while maintaining their margin in Lancaster? Or these suburban areas just shift Democrat off a cliff? Because I think perhaps it was a temporary bounce in 2024 because people were fed up with Biden. And I think also Vance probably is a better situated to appeal to the average suburbanite, and even like an extension of the Trump coalition where like maybe he loses a little bit in the rural areas based off turnout, but he's able to make it up in the suburbs because he's able to explain himself better. You might see that mask some underlying suburban trends for a little bit, but I think at some point we'll have a make or break moment within the next few elections where like either these areas will continue to swing in best case as a Republican state, or worst case, it becomes a Democrat leaning state again. And even if it's like a perpetual 2020 margin where it's like D plus one, D plus two, it becomes like 2004, 2000, even 2008, where Republicans try to contest it, but eventually at the end of the cycle, it becomes slightly Democrat leaning, and Republicans fall just out of reach. Now, Wisconsin, I think, is kind of the opposite. Republicans will not do well um, immediately after this election. Like Wisconsin, if Democrats are going to put up a fighting shot in 2028, like it's definitely on the table for Republicans. But this will be the first state to flip Democrat in 2028. If Democrats are going to flip any states, the one of them is going to be Wisconsin. If they're not going to flip any states, they're not going to flip Wisconsin, obviously. But Wisconsin probably is the closest state that is a Republican hold. I'm not going to say like, oh, it's the closest state. Um, if Democrats don't flip any states, because who knows, Republicans might flip New Hampshire, then that's going to be closer than Wisconsin. But Wisconsin will be the closest hold for Vance, or it will be the first state to flip to whoever opposes him. Now, why do I say that? There's a problem for Republicans, and it's these wow counties, which you can give the Philly suburbs credit. Even if they look bad for Republicans long term, even if they swung away from Trump in 2020, they swung back to him here. And all that aside, it changed the way I think about the Philadelphia collar counties. Originally, I thought of them as like, you just got to take the hit there, you'll lose there, pretty much no matter what, but you can rebuild. The suburban trends are not good for Republicans there, but Republicans can at least make it up throughout the rest of the state. And it really made it hard for me at the end of the cycle to say Pennsylvania would go lean Republican. I was like, in my heart, I think it will. I think Trump wins it by more than one, which if I had said that, I would have been right. People would be like, "Oh my God, you're wrong. Kamala Harris won Pennsylvania by 3 to 5% because anonymous Pennsylvania voters told me." No, no, I'm fucking right, like usual. But I really couldn't make that argument because I couldn't see the Philadelphia suburbs swinging Republican, and they did. And at the end of the day, what the way I thought about them changed. I thought about them less as it's going to swing to Democrats, and perhaps I'm wrong about that. And perhaps that's just me having the same thinking, but like applying it to the long term. Like, yeah, I think at some point it swings Democrat. Maybe that's just me coping a little bit, but I think that they're a competitive area that Republicans have a chance in that could potentially swing a Republican in a good year for them, and that will swing back and forth kind of as the state goes. I'm not going to say the same things ever about these WoW counties. These WoW counties now have shifted Democrat, I think, consistently since 20, 2012. Um, Republicans have lost margins in here every cycle. You've even seen stuff like 2018. Scott Walker does phenomenal in these counties. If I'm not mistaken, he underran his 2014 support, and then Tim Michaels significantly underran Scott Walker's 2018 support in 2022. And the problem is these counties make up a large portion of the state's voter base. Like, they're not everything. If you want to cram these counties, and like the way I think about it is these congressional districts. Like the counties kind of fit between two congressional districts, and then you can go into the Milwaukee suburbs, like the exurbs of Milwaukee County, which kind of are the same thing as them, but like they're about 1/5, like 1/6 to 1/4 of the state. They're not everything, but they're a significant portion of the state, and they're trending left off a cliff. And you'll probably see in 2028, unless Vance is going to significantly run up the score in Wisconsin, win it by like 3 to 4%, the WoW counties will shift left, and they'll shift left by much more than this because Republicans, I mean, they really shouldn't be doing this well in the WoW counties. They're exurban, yes. Some of them even rural. I know the western portion of Waukesha, and a lot of Washington bleeds into rural areas. It's not like there's a fence that says here beyond here lies the rural areas of Wisconsin. But like you start to leave Exurbia and you start to move into rural Wisconsin in the western portion of these counties, but for the most part, there's suburban and exurban. And while Republicans have mostly been holding their margin in the exurbs, especially in the urban areas and the suburban areas, they really haven't. Um, the city of Waukesha, for example, was voting Republican consistently up until the 2023 Supreme Court race, where Daniel Kelly lost. In 2025, Brad Schimmel also did lose it. I think Trump won it this cycle, though I'm not sure. Um, that's not a guarantee. He might have narrowly lost it, but like the fact that the city of Waukesha was voting Republican, like imagine what that implies for the suburbs around it. And I'm not going to say that Waukesha is going to flip Democrat. I think at some point Ozaki will, and I think Waukesha, it's not going to be under 10, but it will narrow up a lot, and definitely get within 15 long term, maybe within 10. But Republicans will keep losing votes here, and like for a state like Pennsylvania, a county like Lancaster, like Trump wins Pennsylvania by 120,000 votes across the state. Lancaster, 46,000 votes. You can lose Lancaster, Trump. Hell, Kamala Harris can net 46,000 votes from the county. You still win the state. You can make the same argument for Michigan. Trump's biggest vote netter, Macomb County. He gets 70,000 votes from there. He wins the state by about 80,000. We'll get to Michigan later. Wisconsin, Waukesha. He wins it by, what is that? 54,000. Oh, he wins the state by 30,000. Ooh, that's not a good sign. Then you couple in Washington, you couple in Ozaki, you couple in the fact that like unlike uh, Pennsylvania, we'll see Michigan eventually. These urban areas really aren't shifting Republican. And I do think long-term Republicans have potential in Wisconsin. Another thing, I hate the New York Times map for this, but like Pennsylvania, pick out the average rural area. Most of them are solid Republican. Republicans are getting like 75, 73, 76, 86, 78, 71% of them. And like you can push the margin higher there, but at some point, like these aren't going to vote like northern Texas panhandle counties. Like, you're never going to get 96, 89, 92, 89, 86% of the vote there as a Republican in every county. You just won't. It's much easier to take a county that's like 59-40 in favor of you and push that margin a little bit higher to like 62-47, something like that. Because there's more voters to swing to you, and especially with these trends with ancestral Democrats becoming Republicans, you want enough people to swing to you. And like the fact that if there's just like a tiny city with like 2,000 people in any of these counties, and that already provides like 50% of Democrats' voter base for the county. Like, you really can't push the margin much higher. But Wisconsin, you look at it, you see three counties where Trump achieved over 70% of the vote. That's insane for a major swing state like Ohio. Which used to be a major swing state, but Trump won. Almost every one of these counties is over 70% Republican. And the same arguments that you can make for Wisconsin, like, oh, these rural areas aren't the same as Ohio rules. They won't solidify. Trump getting 70% in every one of these is unrealistic. Like, okay, he's not going to get 70% in South County. That's kind of obvious. I mean, some people thought that Joe Underlee was going to get 75% of the vote in South County because that primary, but no one's going to get 75% of the vote in South County. Republicans aren't going to. There's too many urban areas there, and like trends are trends, but at some point, that 3.4 shift every cycle isn't going to cut it. Okay, but Ohio, when it solidified for Trump, Trump didn't win every county in the state with over 70% of the vote. Like places like Stark County, Wayne County, Medina County, Ashtabula County, not even gonna try to fucking pronounce that county. Ross County, even the suburban counties around Columbus. He didn't win 75% of the vote in them. The problem is for Democrats, he did in other counties. Like, he didn't have to win every county with 70% of the vote, but he was able to win most of them. And he was able to get pretty big shifts out of the majority of the state because in 2012, these rural areas, they had their reasons to be light red because they were very working class. Republicans really didn't do well with the working class. It was trending Republican at a slow pace, but they were light red. That was the only reason the state was competitive. Way back when you saw counties like Cuyahoga, Franklin be closer, and Republicans win Hamilton, the reason the state was close was because these areas almost voted blue. Like, specifically Monroe, Belmont, and Jefferson were pretty solid blue counties. And you can see in a lot of maps of them stick out like a sore thumb. Where all three of these counties are voting blue. Even I think they voted for Sherrod Brown in 2012. But for the most part, as long as you see those colors below 70%, no questions asked, Republicans probably can gain. And Wisconsin, long term Republicans can gain. But the reason why I think it's bad for Republicans in the short term is because you'll take the hit in these suburban counties, even places like the Bow counties. You'll take the hit there, and these areas will solidify long term. The GOP has a lot of prospective growth, but it's not solidifying as fast as like the Ohio rules. And you probably would have seen a similar thing out of Ohio. Like, if Romney won in 2012, like, he wins it, congrats. 2016 and maybe wins it. 2020, it swings back Democrat, but long term, you see the rural area solidify because there's a long way to go, and like a county like Lincoln County, 62-37. If this is going to be 75-25 by the end of the decade for Republicans, like, that's a long way to go. And it's going to happen slowly, and like Waukesha, short of Democrats flipping it, like, there's going to be a point where those trends stop. But you can get a 3% trend out of Waukesha almost as easy as a 3% trend out of Lincoln. A candidate can't spend their time throughout the entire state. And like, it's going to be quicker for a county like Waukesha, Washington, Ozaukee, for Democrats to hit their ceiling there, for Republicans, than for Republicans to hit their ceiling in the rest of Wisconsin and these rural areas. So that's why I think Wisconsin kind of does the opposite of Pennsylvania. You see it slide into being like a slightly Democrat leaning state compared to the national popular vote, but then eventually boomerang back into a Republican state. I have similar arguments for Minnesota. I'll make those at a different time. I'll leave it out for now because this video is getting kind of long. 29 minutes. My apologies. But Michigan, the crossroads of this video, the subject of this video. Sorry to keep you waiting, folks. Complicated business. But Michigan, I do think at some point, obviously Republicans aren't going to win it immediately, but I think at some point they will begin to become the favorites in Michigan. Now, initially on election night, I was confused that Michigan was voting to the right of of Wisconsin. Michigan was Trump plus 1.4, Wisconsin Trump plus 0.9, and it surprised me because I did think that, or at least I predicted that Kamala Harris would win Michigan. I thought it was slightly leaning towards Trump in private, but Michigan really had never voted Republican outside of gubernatorial elections where Republicans were sweeping Oakland County. In the modern age, it really hadn't voted Republican for much of anything. You saw John James nearly win it. You saw Trump win it in 2016, but that was by the skin of his teeth. And you really didn't see any other opportunities for Republicans to win it. They lost Senate races in 2018, 2020, lost it presidentially in 2020, lost gubernatorial races in 2018 and 2022. So outside of 2016, Republicans really had never won Michigan. But Trump was able to win it for two main reasons. And I think this map shows it. Compared to something like Pennsylvania, where you see to some extent, the most of the state shifting right, but you see mostly two distinct areas where the state is shifting right, and like in between them, a cavern where some areas are shifting right, but also some areas are shifting Democrat. And for the most part, you don't see either side net too many votes from here. Instead, Michigan, the state comes together as one, and for the most part, every county shifts Republican. You see some areas like Ottawa or the Grand Rapids area shift Democrat, but for the most part, you see the bulk of the state, the downstate peninsula shift Republican. This was actually the first time presidentially Republicans won the downstate peninsula since the last time they won the state in 1988. So it was a big night for Michigan Republicans. But Trump won Michigan mostly because he was able to put up massive margins in these rural areas. And like Wisconsin, and in contrast to Pennsylvania, while you do see some areas more Republican than Wisconsin, and I'd say long term Republicans don't have as good of a prospect in these rural areas as they do in the Wisconsin driftless area. Still, there's a lot of room for Republicans to grow in these rural areas. But another reason why Trump won the state, and I think I stand by what I said before the election, which is the Palestine issue will not determine who wins Michigan. If Trump wins Michigan, it will be due to underlying problems with Biden. And I said it when Biden was the nominee. I kind of, to some extent, stopped saying it when Harris became the nominee because the Palestine issue really wasn't at the forefront of anyone's minds. But I said if Biden's going to lose Michigan, there's underlying issues with his base that are determining it. Especially for such a key swing state, I really couldn't envision a foreign conflict, the Israel Hamas war, determining the key swing state at the time because it really seemed like Michigan was the tipping point state. I thought that Wisconsin would vote to the right of it. I was wrong for that. It was actually Pennsylvania. But almost everyone said Michigan will determine the presidential election winner. It was funny, actually. For a little bit, the Trump coalition was considered to be hold North Carolina, flip Georgia, flip Michigan, and flip Nevada, while Biden wins Arizona, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I don't know what the fuck they were smoking, but okay. Um, but I said it wouldn't determine who wins the state, but it would determine the margin. Because had this 9 point shift not come out of Wayne County, and that's not all Israel Palestine. People make it seem like, oh, the only reason Michigan flipped Republican was Israel Palestine. Myers would have won the state by 5 if it weren't for Israel Palestine. Like, okay, she would have gotten a bigger margin in Wayne County. She wouldn't have gotten Biden's margin there, though. You don't think that the rest of the county trended Democrat, do you? She would have lost, and we don't know exactly how much she would have lost. But she would have lost probably like 4 to 5 points without Israel Palestine. Arab Americans are 8% of the county, and while that's somewhat significant, it's not overwhelming. And really, the only reason people talk about it is because they swung so Republican. But even so, why I don't think that they were the primary reason why the state flipped was here. Ann Arbor, very Arab, very college educated, probably caring about Israel Palestine more than Detroit, or to some extent. Wayne County does have more Muslims than Arab Americans, but Washington does as well. It really didn't shift that Republican. Like, especially since Trump was already doing better on college campuses in 2024. Like, you don't see the Arab American shift here. And that's why I don't think that Detroit was because of Arab Americans. I think it was because the working class shifted towards Trump. His message began to resonate with them. And 2020, I think, was a bit of a fluke on Michigan. And it feels weird to say, but I think 2016 was the warning sign for Democrats. Like, Michigan was going to become a Republican trending state. And you have the double whammy of these rural areas solidifying for the GOP and the Democratic margin falling off in Wayne County. Really, Democrats have gone in with this Wayne County or bust strategy for a while. You run up your margin in Wayne County, you don't worry about the rest of the state. And, like, for most Democrat wins, you take out Wayne County, they don't win. Like, obviously, uh, Gretchen Whitmer versus Tudor Dixon. You can take out Wayne County, she still wins. That's a 13-point landslide statewide that goes down to like maybe 2 or 3 points. Like, this Democratic strategy of Wayne County or bust was always going to be wrong. And even if you think that Israel Palestine was the primary issue here, Democrats have done nothing to rectify that. And like, Muslims should be much more conservative than they were in 2020. They were predestined to eventually shift Republican. Like, Biden did better than you had a abortion amendment on the ballot in 2022. There were precincts, and I wonder what the ethnic makeup of them were. There were precincts where the abortion initiative, which, by the way, passed by like nearly 20 statewide when Biden won the state by 3. There were precincts where it did worse than Biden. Um, some precincts were like Biden got 70% of the vote over Trump, where like it was in risk of failing in those precincts when it won by 20 statewide, which is insane. Where were those precincts? I'll give you 3 guesses, and the last 2 don't count. Muslim areas. Muslims are a vastly socially conservative group. Like, I'm not saying every Muslim is super socially conservative and want to kill. They want to kill every gay person. Like, no. But eventually, you were always going to see the war on terror dissipate from these people's minds. Like, their hatred of the Republican brand, because of Bush specifically, was always going to disappear. And like, Trump did say some inflammatory things, of course, the Muslim ban. Uh, like you can't say he's like pro or there's some conflicting reports on that, but you can't say like he's too friendly to Muslims for a Republican. Like, he shares some of that lack of fidelity between Muslims. Like, he's definitely not too kind to them, but eventually, like, Muslims voted something like 75-25 Republican in 2000. And then weirdly, they shifted like 80 points Democrat in 2004. I don't know what caused that. But you were always going to see, even if they didn't vote Republican, since in some areas they actually ended up voting Republican in 2024. But even if you didn't see that happen, you would have eventually seen them begin to shift Republican. Is they agree more with Republicans on social issues, even on economic issues. Like, it was always a fluke that Mexicans were so, not Mexican, Arabs were so, so Democrat. And you kind of saw the same thing with Latinos, and that's why I said Mexicans. They kind of got over their immediate hatred for Trump in 2020, and that's why you saw a lot of Hispanic areas shift right. I think you'll see a similar thing with Muslim areas. A lot of people were talking about, oh, yes, the only reason Texas was Republican was because of all the Hispanics, especially Florida. People thought it was just the Cubans, and they'll shift away from Trump. You can see that now, like, oh my God, they're deporting all the Mexicans. They'll all shift away from Trump. Like, really, 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 we've been waiting 3 cycles for this to happen. But I think you see a similar thing in Michigan. People don't really recognize it because I the Hispanic trends, we have so much evidence for that. But here, we really only have 1 cycle of it happening. But there's been the seeds of it before. And the main thing in Michigan is like, there really isn't another state where Democrats bank on just one city running up for them as much as possible. You say, oh, but Michigan, there's Grand Rapids. Okay, you net 20,000 votes from there. You can net 30,000 from there. It really doesn't make a dent in Trump's 80,000 vote win. You can say, oh, all these areas around Detroit. But for the most part, that's still the Detroit metropolitan area. Like, even Ohio, when Democrats were winning the state, when it was a toss up, 1-2, you have unfavorable environment in Franklin County. You can make it up in Cleveland. Same thing like a racial demographic, really core to Cleveland, but not core to Columbus, falls off for the Democrats. You make it up in Franklin County. Even Pennsylvania, you see a similar thing. Philadelphia, you've seen fall off more and more and more for Democrats each cycle. But even though it's really only a Philadelphia thing, and you make it up in Allegheny County. That's always been what Democrats do. And you look at Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Dane. You lose in Milwaukee, you make it up in Dane. Minnesota, you kind of a one area, but even to some extent, a lot of Hennepin County and Ramsey County are different. Now, could that inform why I think Minnesota could be more interesting than people think long term? Watch the video when that comes out. But you really see that Democrats, if they collapse in Wayne County, which they're probably bound to do eventually, they have nothing. They have no second area where they can run it up. You're down another 9 points in Wayne County. You have no hope at all of winning statewide. And we'll especially see this in the gubernatorial election. Because Democratic margins in Wayne County should definitely decrease. And if they're going to win that, they're going to have to run it up statewide. If they can't win that gubernatorial election, they're done in Michigan. More than likely, they'll win like maybe 2 or 3 statewide elections for the next 2 or 3 decades. Because if in a blue wave where you have a relatively strong slate of candidates, and even in the rest of the state, the independent is taking for Republicans, if you can't win without Wayne County, then you're done. And there's a reason why I think Republicans are slightly favored for that gubernatorial election, because Democrats go in Wayne or bust. The run it up in Detroit, don't think about anything else strategy, and it bit them in the ass in 2016, and it bit them in the ass in 2024. And you'll probably see that similar category, that similar pattern of things happen in the next Michigan election, and the next Michigan election. And more than likely, Democrats probably won't be able to stop the trend in Wayne County. Maybe in a really good year for them, they can shift it like 2 points Democrat, something like that. If Trump comes out and says, "I hate all Muslims. I hate Muslims. Allah is evil. I hate Muslims." Like, even then, you're probably not going to reach your 2020 levels of support with Muslims. You just aren't. And at some point, that's always going to hurt you in Michigan. And you're screwed if you're trying to defend Michigan going blue, because you're damned if you're damned if you don't. If you think it's Muslims, Muslims are not shifting back Democrat. There's fantasy like, oh yes, after Trump pisses off all the racial minorities, they will all shift Democrat. We've been saying this for a decade. Like, I'm still waiting on Hispanics shifting back. I'm still waiting on, oh, all the Hispanic realignment people are going to be shocked when Biden hits 70% in Imperial County. So true. So true. Like, we've been waiting on all the minorities to rise up against Trump, the resistance to happen for so long. Like, remember when people were saying the Puerto Rican vote is going to flip to Kamala Harris and it's going to make Florida go Democrat? But that's not all. Look at Berks County, Reading, Berks it's gonna go so Democrat that Berks County is gonna flip Democrat. You'll see all the Hispanics across the Northeast all flip Democrat. Like, remember that? Remember nothing came of that? That's the exact same thing that's happening in Michigan. So, what if you believe that's why Detroit shifted Republican this cycle? Democrats are fucked. And if, like me, you think that's not the whole story, it's part of the story, but it's not it, those underlying factors will just continue to exacerbate themselves further and further and further. You're eventually going to see those same trends maybe not accelerate, but become much more steady than like 2016 they were on, 2020 they were off, 2018 they were off, 2024 they were on, 2022 they were off, 2026 it looks like they might be on. You'll eventually see it be more consistent. A Democrat lost almost every cycle in Wayne County, and at that point you really don't have a path statewide in Michigan. So that is why I think Republicans probably out of the major 3, even 4 Rust Belt states, long term probably have the best chance of Michigan. And the thing is, I think Republicans are favored to win the presidency. This ties back to one of my old videos, or not that old, like a few days ago, because Georgia and Pennsylvania, at least one of those two, is probably going to remain Republican for the near future. And by the time that both of them, as I'm predicting here, are tilting a little bit Democrat, you'll probably see Wisconsin begin to shift Republican. So, like that video said, even if the presidency isn't going to be solid Republican, even if Republicans aren't going to win 312 as the baseline every time. You'll probably see Republicans be slightly favored for the most part in these presidential elections, because once Michigan solidifies Republican, that's a pretty given 267 electoral votes. And even if Democrats flip North Carolina, even if the toss-up map looks something like this, Republicans still have quite a definitive edge. Even if you take away Arizona, there's still a definitive Republican edge. If you give Arizona, you give Georgia, there's still the edge. So that's why, long term, I do think Republicans are favored to win the presidency. And more importantly, to this video, I think that Michigan will eventually become a much more Republican state than it is now. Not going to put a margin on it. Not going to say this percent of the time is going to vote Republican for president, this percent of the time Democrat. That's really not the point of this video. But I think if you got to pick one out of three main Rust Belt swing states to say this one's gone for Democrats long term, almost definitively, is going to be Michigan. And it's not going to be Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Lord help me if I hear another Scott Presler tweet. Oh my god, we gotta make Pennsylvania Ohio again, or make Pennsylvania Florida again, make New Jersey Pennsylvania again. Like, oh my god, you're wasting so much time on Pennsylvania. Just go to Michigan. You register all the fucking Arabs you want to sleep with in Dearborn as you want. Like, we have so much more potential in Michigan than in Pennsylvania. Oh my god, it drives me insane. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, it's a bit more ranty. I didn't think it'd be this long, but I want to do videos for mostly each of these 7 swing states and some other states like Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, even Oklahoma. Cook J. Gagnon gets on my nerves. But it's kind of served as these 3 all combined. I'll do one for Minnesota if this video is popular whatsoever. So if you want to see my take on Minnesota or even New Hampshire, North Carolina, Georgia, since I got a lot to say about these 2 specifically, especially Georgia, another one where I rebel against the consensus, much like Michigan, much like Pennsylvania, um, even much like Minnesota. Stay tuned. Those videos should be coming out soon. Like, subscribe, comment down below if you enjoyed this video to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Godspeed.